Hello, folks. Thanks for taking an interest in our video topic today, risk analysis for tech startups. My name is David Elderfield, and my career in high tech kicked off doing mainframe backups and operations way back in 1978, just after entering high school. That same job introduced me to coding, when senior developers were foolish enough to let me write subroutines for a parametric engine. Combining AutoCAD, beta release 0.2, it was tested on designing the steel trusses of the Bellingham Michelin warehouse. A refresh took 2 cups of coffee to happen, but I was hooked, just at 17 years old. And yes, that Michelin warehouse, it's still standing. I have worked as an engineer and in management with some of the world's top R&D firms, kicking off with an intern stint at the Triumph Particle Accelerator. Over a 2-decade corporate career, my expertise narrowed to hardware and firmware developments in RF data communication and GPS, teaming with great coworkers at Nortel, Novatel, Sierra Wireless, HP, and General Dynamics. These were the teams that moved an entire industry from suppliers of niche products that only experts ordered to today's monster companies that must deliver their latest tools to everyone's hands by yesterday, unless that consumer is less than 2 years old. I had a front row seat to the digital revolution, and the best is yet to come. That's my positive pitch. The world is changing at a mind-blowing rate, and technology is mandatory if we are going to keep up. The negative take: the world is changing at a mind-blowing rate, and using technology properly is mandatory if we're going to keep up. But many Canadian industries and most of our authorities are well behind on the curve. Today, this is a risk that all large corporations must account for in ROI terms, well before they invest in Canada. On a global scale, we are not savvy in understanding the impact of our 19th century laws and tax systems and how they impact business, especially in the tech arena. The tech community understands compatibility in technology, but now must understand how we are impacted by our societal structures and systems. We will come back to that, but let's build an imaginary company first. Narrowing this down to the street level where we all live, let's decide on a startup we can passionately build into a global player. Start small and address the boring structural decisions in a scalable manner. Never start with a 5-year plan that includes where to build your next generation robotic assembly line. 5 years away is a different universe. In my real life scenario, I first focused on the skill sets that Canada is admired for and that I could leverage: software and industrial hardware. The former we are broadly educated in and have no lack of personnel. And the latter requires low volume process controlled manufacturing, which Canada still needs and can run profitably just supplying our domestic resource industries. Let's keep narrowing our risk scenario to a new entrepreneur's level. Specifically, we will look at the high-tech entrepreneur planning to take a new concept and drive it through an R&D process, through commercialization, and finally on to manufacture, marketing it as a new industrial product. I'm tired just thinking about everything involved, but this was my sweet spot. I cut my teeth on high-volume consumer products, but then every North American CEO hammered on China's door, insisting that Asia take over every scrap of manufacturing and most of our engineering. But greed just couldn't figure out how to sell us down the river on the low-volume industrial stuff. So that is where Canada could still kick ass on innovation and make solid profits. In 2002, after climbing corporate ladders for 16 years and consulting for 3, that is exactly where I was standing. I was just about to start the most Canadian pastime that exists, just slightly more popular than hockey. And that's, of course, due diligence. Here is a synopsis of the decision-making that we went through. Staying within the career that you've built over years or spreading your wings and attempting new horizons is a deeply personal consideration. For me, this was a no-brainer. I love the work and the people of my industry. Others may not have that connection with their job and might look for a complete change. The risk in that case is the learning curve. Remember, most learning comes from mistakes because most of us take time to form into reliable and productive team members. The question of your target customer base and the burning problem that you wish to solve for them is a sword with 2 edges. Value in technology derives from the benefit that technology brings. But the higher the value of a solution, the more competition there is in trying to address it. The risks here are twofold: quantifying the value and longevity of a market opportunity and determining if you are ahead of the competition and whose solution will be superior. The first risk has flattened huge companies when they call it wrong. Usually the short-term value is called right, but due to major industry shifts that could not be predicted, their market disappears before they could recover their sunk costs. COVID-19 is the perfect example of the unpredictable hammering the bottom line of new service businesses. The second risk comes down to how well you are connected to your industry and how much homework and footwork you are willing to do. The internet and good search skills are not enough. You need to talk with industry leaders, investors, users, dreamers, the old, the young, the artist, the minimalist, the pragmatist. Treat your own opinion as worthless, unless you intend to purchase every unit that you produce. Superiority, it can be expanded functionality, lower manufacturing cost, better distribution, better aesthetic, longer lifespan. But quantifying the value of that superior feature is hard. Comparing Apple phones with Alcatel is the same as comparing a Bentley with a Ford pickup. Each of you clearly sees which is superior, and all of you are wrong. It comes down to the need you want addressed. If you want simple, cheap communication where the loss of the hardware is insignificant, then Alcatel's product is vastly superior to Apple's. So, bottom line, always ensure you are comparing Apple to other apples. Entrepreneurs believe in themselves. They believe they are going to be successful. But are they really up to the task? I'm hard-nosed. I brought my kids up telling them, be your own worst critic, or someone else will take the job. I still think it is the best advice. Come up with the worst scenario you can imagine when designing a product and deeply understand the limits of what it can do. Likewise, know yourself. I can take stress. I can go days without sleep. I don't think about food or drink when I'm busy. I'm not a party guy. When I get obsessive, it precludes being aware of other people's needs. I am miserable to be around sometimes. Obviously, I need a sales and marketing group. The necessities you lack are exceedingly valuable, and you need to know if you can afford them. Challenger brands come in all shapes and sizes. You recognize these logos, even the older versions. That's because these companies are now in front of you on a daily basis. But they all started as long shots, underdogs. And this is the story that you need to read and understand. Each of these companies handled their risk in different ways and unusual ways. But remember this, each of them started from a small operation, and every one of them was at catastrophic risk all the way up until they were in 9 figures in valuation. Don't run blue sky scenarios. Run worst case. Know that you have unknowns coming at you regardless of your circumstances. I am going to end this video outlining how I had the right skills, had the partners with the needed complementary capabilities. We called the market perfectly, fully developed a highly touted product line, created strategic partnerships with top global players, had top government endorsements, and had completed a binding investment agreement that valued the company in the 8-figure territory. And we had orders. Those are all the major hurdles, right? Team, technology, product position, customer base, and long-term financing all addressed perfectly. What could go wrong? Well, I missed one. Don't be naive about or trust human nature when it has any power over your circumstances. We all miss something in any project. A well-balanced team gives you the advantage of many eyes looking at every angle. But just like boxing, it is the combinations that take you out. In this next section, I want to look at various approaches to supplying your customer with new technology solutions. I also want to talk about how risk elements can be easily anticipated on their own, but you must take the time to understand their impact in combination. There is only one rationale for why someone walks away from a good corporate career, losing a guaranteed income, to spend their own money developing a new approach to a tech problem. They believe they can bring a better solution and that there will be financial recognition at the end. But no one wishes to carry 100% of all the risk. The question becomes, what approach and timing to use that brings in outside investors without losing control of all your work after you have bought down their risk? There are many ways to approach test marketing and promoting your now complete business plan. You have analyzed the market. You know your customer base. You have a path to profits. Your team skill set is stacked, and you have the finances to get through a strategic amount of the development without an outside investor. Now is the time to make potential investors aware of your unlimited potential well before you need their money. How do you approach this? The approach you choose is a balance of how much risk you are willing to personally absorb so that investors can see the market opportunity as highly attainable. Investors are highly averse to risk and love asking you, "What skin have you got in the game?" as a way to explain how precious their dollars are, because you've only foregone your career and time with your children, who now refer to you as Uncle Dad. I'll now go through 3 broad approaches that define the different thinking that exists in the sleep-deprived fog of an entrepreneurial mind. Make no bones about it. All have failed far more than they have succeeded, but all have had huge successes when used appropriately at the right time and place. The first approach is build it and they will come. This is the slowest approach that allows the entrepreneur to develop new concepts while maintaining traditional employment. The financial risks are lower, personal financing suffices, and time can be taken to mull over design and business details. More homework can be done on market requirements, and after a year or 2 of having no life and no sleep, you are perfectly ready for your life partner to walk in with a brochure from a new competitor who has just taken the world by storm and left you in their dust. The world waits for no man or woman. Compare the 2 risk graphs to see how slow turnaround actually increases the chances that competition can make you irrelevant. Let's call them harmonic sensitivities and understand how, in this case, schedule and competition, can pair up to amplify each other as a problem. When viewed correctly and to scale, the harmonic sensitivity of this approach multiplies the project risk by 2.5 times at the 3/4 completion mark. And yet Apple and Google use this approach. Google addressed this combined risk potential by giving major strategic partners tax advantages from the research that they were doing. The second approach is something I call the vision cell. I have seen very non-technical people have great success with this. They too go through a thorough competitive analysis, but with an eye open for competitors they can buy out. They analyze the market opportunity more than anything else because their emphasis is more on sales and less on operating costs or engineering. This also allows them to look to white label agreements and have some other company adapt an existing product to your specifications. Brand and cost control is the emphasis here, and they rely heavily on great graphics, great website promotion, and a lot of upsell. The early stimulation of excitement can get early investment if sufficient work has been done to ensure a market position. But remember that favored question that venture capital reps ask. What's your skin in the game? It doesn't matter if the rep is a 22-year-old dropout from some community college. He is on the right side of the table to ask that question. And you need more than pretty pictures and charts to answer it satisfactorily. Spinning is unlikely to address this question, which will be followed up with, why don't I just buy out your competitor, since you have no production capability? This 22-year-old is clearly enjoying the power he holds at the table. So be prepared with strategic planning, hold design patents, strong trademark control, and at least one large customer should be in the bag. And make that kid sign a non-disclosure, please. When it comes to business, trust is only for family, and that's only if you are lucky. The harmonic sensitivities of the vision cell depend on your ability to lock down contracts with OEM suppliers, buyers, and with investment. That contract ability can automatically combine badly with engineering, since engineering is no longer controlled in-house. My favorite example of the successful vision cell is Segway. Top investors got excited at the concept stage, and a herd of investors stampeded in without their usual intensive due diligence. Money likes to follow money. The case study for the next approach is my own company, Wayfair Identifiers, Inc. I call this third approach the barn burner. This is the favorite approach by engineers and the like. This involves a short and intense competitive analysis in an arena that you are already working and skilled in. Usually, the innovation that differentiates and makes the product advantageous is patentable. So a PPA can go out to the US Patent Office within weeks, allowing you a full year to file a formal patent. Trademark and patent pending are stamped all over any shared documentation so that our 22-year-old is cut off at the knees. The business plan is usually written and agreed on by the partners prior to leaving established employment, but each partner will have to have at least enough financial capability to survive 2 years without any income. No one has ever dared ask us what skin we have in the game. The first 2 stages were fully paid for, out of pocket, with after-tax savings and assets. We fully owned an R&D operation and all the IP that it produced. Why would anyone take that much risk? Confidence in each other, in the approach, and in the benefit the work was going to provide, plus at least one ace up the sleeve. In my case, my partner and I had responded to a federal government request for proposals. They needed new technology to ensure border security, motivated by the memory of 9/11. And we had outlined an efficient new approach that maximized our combined expertise in RF datacomms, GPS, and software development. A 400-page tome got produced by us, 2 obsessive-compulsive engineers, while we were still employed with other projects. With 1 software kernel and 3 hardware products, we could globally monitor all border crossings, including containerized cargo or travel visas. There was also a smattering of idealism. Higher speed border crossings and pre-approval of crossings so that commercial deliveries could flow unstopped at every border and intermodal exchange was going to make the world a better place. The value of the secondary market for statistical analysis of the border crossings data was also very high, and we were going to do very well in the end. Our strategy set a very high bar. Anticipate all questions and address them so clearly that they become redundant. We did get endorsed by 4 of the top ministers in our federal government, including the Deputy Prime Minister, as well as military, immigration, and CBSA officials. Even the analysts within the U.S. Homeland Security were on our side. The barn burner is, without a doubt, the riskiest approach. Full-time engineering, early development starts, high burn rate of both personal savings and that friendly money coming from mum. No refunds. It is run like a large corporate R&D project, but there is no other revenue or projects that share the benefit of sunk operating costs. So each dollar spent has a lower impact to core engineering. Barn burner is all about speed because there is never enough money and investors need to be vying for a piece of this to make it really worthwhile. But done properly, those investors will never strip you of control, and that is a prime motivator. Though we kept in constant communication with the venture capital realm, we did not start looking for our investment partner until the beginning of our 3rd year. We had numerous patents, alpha test results, and had already signed 5 strategic partnership agreements. Following the philosophy of building it right the first time, we made the company structure scalable, right down to the documentation control system and an outside board of directors, which indicates to investors that a public company status is in the cards. We did it perfectly. Right technology, patented control, strategic partners who owned large market positions, and 3 vying investment houses. The final binding investment contract just needed us to complete a pilot test that we had already started before they released the first tranche of their $6 million investment. They were going to be our 50-50 partners, with my team retaining the deciding vote in a disagreement. For us, that was a grand slam. We controlled a company with a waiting market and a valuation of $12 million or about 16 million in Canadian funds. We had worried about our financial capability for over 2 years, but we had made it with time and even a few contingency dollars to spare. Just like our risk prediction chart had indicated. We peaked at the end of the second year in our risk, and now we were on our way downhill. Nothing could go wrong, and yet it did. We all know that you have to plan for the known unknowns and allow contingency for unknown unknowns. But how defensive should you be? In R&D, there is regularly a long planned period where no revenues can happen, and where many operations survive on personal after-tax savings and assets. In order to maximize the efficiency of limited funds, companies take advantage of government R&D support programs, like SR&ED here in Canada. This program reviews the expenditures that the company makes and allows a rebate of up to 15% of those funds that went directly to research-required materials, specialty equipment, and manpower. Value in kind, or VIK, is the value of the unpaid time and expertise that the principals of the company put in on top of the cash money they provided. The amount of cash that I and my family provided to the development of our border security solutions was $1.3 million. The VIK totaled to another $600,000. SR&ED provided us with a further $210,000 to use in any manner that we wanted, so it was designated towards non-technical operation costs like accountants and lawyers. We are not businessmen, and because that arena holds too many known unknowns for most engineers, we hired bigger firms to represent us. Our SR&ED applications and meetings were prepared and attended by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and all our agreements were written and reviewed by Tingle Merritt Law. There were other accountants and lawyers, including our board of directors treasurer, Wayne Tinker, who is an investment law expert. We thought that was defensive enough, and felt very comfortable spending the vast majority of our 14 to 16-hour days strictly addressing engineering questions pertinent to completing our pilot tests on the BC coast. That was our miscalculation. The unknown unknown we missed was that government hides their intent, even when you think you are having open and honest communication with them. So you never know if they are actually in agreement with you. We were not vulnerable to financial deficiency and had monitored and handled that risk throughout the project. What we did not prepare for is a government where one hand doesn't communicate with the other, and you are responsible for their lack of internal communication. So how does a government body show its displeasure? They freeze your accounts. This is why an internal government issue creates an instant harmonic sensitivity with your financing. Very quickly, you no longer have any. I now wish I had read this quote from a W5 interview prior to running this entire project. The quote is, "Their goal is to break the taxpayer," said Jeff Perry, a former CRA auditor. CRA auditors have the feeling that if the person has no resources, how are they going to defend? People go and they pay their assessments, even though they know they're not true assessments, just because they cannot afford the process. The risk we never knew about was that whether they are in the right or in the wrong, government is willing to turn off your access to money in a heartbeat. This has been my cautionary tale to many people, and I wish you to have learned something from this video. But most of all, I'm hoping that unknowns are now known to you.